Some of the smartest students end up the most confused in real life, not because they are not intelligent, but because intelligence alone is not enough. They were the top of their class, they answered every question, they understood every lesson, they did everything right. And yet, when school ended, something didn't make sense anymore, because the environment changed and they were not prepared for it. This is the hidden truth about being a smart student. In school, being smart means knowing the answers, being fast, being accurate, being correct, but in real life there are no clear answers, no fixed question, no guaranteed outcomes. But in real life there are no clear answers, no fixed questions, no guaranteed outcomes, and suddenly the skills that made you successful in school are no longer enough. One of the biggest reasons smart students struggle is because they were rewarded for certainty, for being right, for avoiding mistakes, and over time they become attached to that identity. The one who knows, the one who gets it right, and that identity becomes fragile. Because in your world you will be wrong, you will fail, you will face situations where you don't know what to do. And if your confidence is built only on being right, then every mistake feels like a threat, not just on your progress, but your identity. So what happens? You hesitate, you overthink, you avoid the risks, because you are trying to protect that image. Another reason is overthinking. Smart students are used to analyzing everything, breaking things down, understanding every details, and where that is useful, it can also become an limitation. Because in real life, you cannot always think your way through everything. Sometimes you have to act, even when you are not 100% sure. But overthinking creates delay, it creates hesitation, it creates inaction, and inaction leads to missed opportunities. There is also something deeper: dependence on structure. In school, everything is organized, clear, predictable. You know what to study, you know how to prepare, you know what success looks like. But in your life, there is no clear structure. You have to create your own direction, your own goals, your own system. And many smart students struggle with that, not because they are not capable, but because they were never trained for it. They were trained to follow, not to design. Another hidden factor is fear of failure. Because when you are used to succeeding, failure feels unfamiliar, uncomfortable, even embarrassing. So instead of trying and risking failure, you wait. You delay, you stay in your comfort zone, but growth does not happen there. And slowly, potential turns into frustration because you know what you are capable but you are not moving. And that gap is painful. But here is something important. This is not a limitation of intelligence, it is a limitation of mindset, and mindset can change. The truth is, smart students do not fail because they are not capable. They fail because they were trained for the wrong environment. They were trained to succeed in a system, not to navigate reality. And once you understand that, everything begins to make sense. Because now you stop questioning your intelligence and start questioning your approach. People who break out of this pattern do something powerful. They let go of the need to always be liked. They accept that not knowing is part of growth. They stop protecting their image and start building their ability. And that shift changes everything. Because now, mistakes are no longer something to avoid, they become something to learn from. Fear is no longer a threat, it becomes feedback. And once you see fear that way, you become free. Free to try, free to experiment, free to move even when you are not sure. Another shift happens when they move from thinking to doing, because knowledge without action creates frustration, but action, even imperfect action, creates progress. They begin to understand that clarity does not come before action, it comes through action. You don't figure everything out and then start, you start and figure things out along the way. And that realization removes hesitation, it removes overthinking, it creates momentum, step by step, experience by experience. And through that process, they begin to build something deeper than intelligence: confidence. Real life confidence, not based on being right, but based on having faced the challenge and handled them. Because confidence is not built in comfort, it is built in action, in uncertainty, and pushing forward even when things are not clear. They also begin to create their own structure. Instead of waiting for instructions, they set their own goals, they design their own system, they take control of their direction, and that is powerful. Because now they are not dependent on an external system, they are building their own, and that is where true independence comes comes from. Another important shift is how they see intelligence, because intelligence is not just about knowing, it is about adapting, solving problems, learning from experience, making decisions in uncertainty. And once they begin to develop those skills, they realize something important: they were never failing, they were just incomplete, and now they are becoming whole. So if you are watching this right now and you were always smart one but now feel stuck, understand this: you did not lose your ability, you just need to use it differently. You need to move, to act, to experience, to step outside of what you were trained to do. Because your intelligence is not your limit, it is your advantage, but only if you combine it with action, only if you combine it with experience, only if you are willing to leave the comfort of being right and enter the growth of being in progress. Because in the end, the people who succeed are not the ones who know the most, they are the ones who do the most with what they know. They try, they fail, they learn, they adapt, and they continue. And if you become that person, then your intelligence will not hold you back. It will push you forward. Because now you are not just smart, you are effective, you are capable, you are moving. And that is what creates real success.